Good afternoon, and on behalf of Chicago Public Library, thank you for joining us for Dementia 101. If you are watching live, we will have a Q&A after the slide presentation, so please type your questions in and we'll answer them after the presentation. We are so lucky to have today's presenters with us, experts from Rush, here to share their knowledge and expertise. A quick note that next week, May 13th, they will be joining us again for a program focused on caregiving for dementia patients. Now over to Rush for Dementia 101.
Pardon me. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I really want to tell you that we have a very exciting show planned for you. We will be talking about Dementia 101. It's a great presentation that we really enjoy giving. I will be serving as the discussant for today, and I am a clinical psychologist and family medicine in the Department of Family Medicine at Rush University Medical Center, and I'm a researcher also in that department. I would love to introduce you to our presenters today. First up, we're going to have Sophie Sipura, who also is from the Rush University Medical Center, and she is a clinical research assistant for the All of Us research program, also in the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center. And then after Sophie speaks, and we're going to have Elizabeth Franco join us, and she's also a clinical research assistant with the All of Us research program, and also at the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center. We also would like to acknowledge Michael Pessman, who is the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center. Although he will not be presenting today, he is a part of our team, and so we wanted to introduce you to him as well. So with that said, if Sophie, you would like to start by telling our viewers a bit more about what we have planned today in terms of an agenda and also the objectives. And then I will join you a bit later on for the Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much, Lisa, for that kind introduction. As she was saying, I am a clinical research assistant for the Rush University Medical Center. And before we begin, I just wanted to quickly touch on some of the things we'll be going over today, such as recognizing the differences between Alzheimer's disease and dementia, the different stages and risk factors seen for the disease. And we will briefly go over some of the common treatments as well as the research studies being done. And for those interested, we do have some resources available that we will go over in hopes that it might be helpful to some of you. And with that, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So after this presentation, our hope is to try to explain the umbrella of dementia a bit more and help our audience understand how to look for the 10 signs of the disease. And I believe you can go to the next slide, actually. Perfect, thank you. And as I was saying, I just wanted to go over some of the things. We'll be going over all these different aspects of dementia, which sometimes it can be such an overwhelming topic, but having that early prevention, being that much more aware of the disease can help with that early prevention approach and those measures that much sooner. And you can go to your next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. So as I was saying, our hope is to try to explain that umbrella of dementia a bit more and help our audience understand how to look for the 10 signs of the disease. And at the end of this presentation, we will be encouraging our audience to ask questions and share your stories and connect through your experience with Alzheimer's. Next slide, please. So before we begin, I also wanted to introduce you to a scientist behind the discovery of Alzheimer's disease. Alois Alzheimer, he was a German neurologist interested in diseases of the brain. And I believe it was in 1901, in the early 1900s, he met a 51-year-old German patient who suffered from short-term memory loss, which worsened into severe dementia. And it was soon after that, after this woman's passing, that during an autopsy of her brain, Alzheimer first described seeing what he called plaques and string-like tangles in the usually empty spaces between those brain nerve cells. And later, he ended up delivering a lecture about those findings, bringing him to fame as those plaques and tangles he described became known as Alzheimer's disease. So since the discovery of this disease, there are now currently more than 5 million Americans alone living with Alzheimer's. So considering that number, Alzheimer's therefore also impacts more than 15 million family members, friends, and caregivers. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, dementia is a term that's often intermixed with Alzheimer's. And the thing is that dementia and Alzheimer's aren't the same. Dementia is more of an umbrella term for the different types of dementias. And Alzheimer's, as seen here, is the most common form of dementia, accounting for 60 to 80% of dementia cases. And next slide, please. Thank you. So when you look more closely at their differences, dementia is a more general umbrella term, as I mentioned, describing a group of symptoms associated with a decline in the person's cognitive abilities to the point that it can interfere with your daily life. Alzheimer's, meanwhile, is a specific type of dementia, a degenerative brain disease where dementia symptoms gradually worsen to the point that even simplest tasks can become impossible. Next slide, please. So though there's currently no cure for Alzheimer's, researchers have identified the biological cause of the disease, which we now know is cell damage from abnormal deposits of a protein called amyloid plaques and twisted fibers that I mentioned earlier called tau tangles, which, as I also mentioned, together build up in between those spaces in the brain, between the brain's nerve cells. And throughout the brain, those billions of nerve cells called neurons typically send messages in order to create memories, feelings, thoughts. So when those protein and fiber deposits build up the way they do with this disease, those once healthy connections can break down, leading the brain tissue to begin to shrink. So by the final stages of Alzheimer's, this process of brain atrophy, as seen in the photo, becomes widespread. And this can cause a significant loss of brain volume and ultimately a severe loss of basic functions. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Alzheimer's usually progresses slowly in 3 general stages: early, middle, and late. As the disease progresses, each person is affected differently. So while it's not always the same for everyone, the following here are just to give a general idea of the changes at each stage. In the early stages, for instance, the person diagnosed may function independently, they may still drive, work, be part of social activities. And despite this, some minor difficulties may be noticed, such as forgetting familiar words or something just read. And so with the middle stage, this can often last for many years as the neural damage spreads to the frontal lobes, which are involved in problem solving, judgment, impulse control, which usually prevents us from saying or doing things that might be viewed as inappropriate or even bizarre. So symptoms by this middle stage may be more noticeable as the person diagnosed may begin to display more unusual behaviors, such as insisting on wearing the same sweater, the same socks at all times, or refusing to bathe. And by the late stage Alzheimer's, dementia symptoms are often so severe that the person usually needs constant supervision and care. The person may lose awareness of their surroundings, and as their cognitive skills worsen, they may no longer be able to recognize certain faces. Significant personality changes also may take place where they may become increasingly violent or paranoid or begin wandering during a state of confusion called sundowning. And their physical abilities can deteriorate to the point that basic living skills such as walking, bladder, bowel control, speaking, swallowing can become difficult. So at this stage, you can imagine how compassionate care is even more important. Next slide, please. Thank you. So with how tricky it can be to distinguish Alzheimer's from normal age-related changes, being able to identify something like this early on, as I mentioned earlier, is so important in allowing for preparation or potentially preventative action to be taken that much sooner. So to help with that early diagnosis, the Alzheimer's Association created a list of what we call 10 warning signs to help people identify symptoms that may be related to Alzheimer's. For number one, with memory loss, although symptoms can vary widely, difficulty remembering things or forgetfulness is often the most common early stage symptom of Alzheimer's. While normally aging people may have those moments of memory lapses, or they typically remember them later. So in other words, you typically remember what you forgot. But with Alzheimer's, that doesn't happen. You can forget something that was recently learned, and even after someone reminds you, it doesn't seem familiar to you. So one of the common telltale signs of Alzheimer's, for instance, is discovering that your loved one left the stove on for hours, which would be a memory lapse that put others in danger. And that's not a normal age-related change. For number two, with confusion or with time or place, a normally aging person might get confused with the day of the week, but they can usually remember where they are later. Whereas a person with Alzheimer's may not only lose track of dates, but they could lose track of where they are, how they got there, or their perception of time. So 5 minutes can seem like 5 hours. And this one still stands out to me because, as I mentioned earlier, this means a lot to me. My grandfather had Alzheimer's, and we were very close. And during a visit with him when I was 16, he pulled my mom aside and asked her who that woman was in his kitchen. And she explained, well, that's Sophie, your granddaughter. And he responded with a lot of confusion, saying, no, Sophie is only 5 years old. That's a full-grown woman. So for him, there was very much a loss of perception of time then. And with number three, difficulty completing familiar tasks. This might be seen when you're driving to that familiar grocery store that you have gone to for years, and suddenly you're unsure of how to get there or how to get home. Number four, feelings of confusion might be experienced, as well as suspicion or anxiety as a result of that confusion. And with number five, we might see more decisions that can seem irresponsible, inappropriate, or even unsafe. And with number six, someone with Alzheimer's might find it harder to develop or follow a plan or work with numbers. So for instance, the person might find that they're now unable to follow the ingredients to that same favorite chocolate chip banana bread recipe that they had made for 30 years. And for number seven, those diagnosed may have trouble following or joining a conversation. They may join or they may stop in the middle of a conversation and have no idea how to continue, or they might repeat themselves. You may also see them calling familiar objects by the wrong name, such as calling a watch a hand clock. And for number eight, since it may be harder for those individuals to engage in conversation, the person diagnosed may also feel or become more socially withdrawn. And for number nine, for this one, while we've all lost our keys, our purses, glasses, losing your glasses, for instance, and not even remembering that you have or need glasses, that can be a sign. Sometimes those with Alzheimer's may misplace something and then not be able to find it later because they don't identify the object, such as their glasses, as their own. And with number 10, this can be seen when the person diagnosed has trouble judging distance or determining the height of a stair, which can affect your balance. We can go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So though the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's is increasing age, it has been found that people younger than age 65 can develop what's called early onset Alzheimer's, but it's after age 65 that the risk typically doubles every 5 years. And with regards to something like family history, as you might imagine, those who have family members with Alzheimer's are more likely to develop what's called familial Alzheimer's disease. However, your likelihood of developing the disease isn't always genetic because environmental factors, as you can see here, and your lifestyle can also play a role in this as well, such as your diet, how much you exercise, or how often you engage in mentally stimulating activities. So we can't change the genes that we inherit from our parents, but we can change our lifestyle in ways that can help prevent the diseases that run in our families. And I also wanted to mention with regard to heredity, this can apply to race and ethnicity as well. The disease has been found to be more common in certain groups. So for instance, research has shown older African Americans as being twice as likely to develop it, and Hispanics as being 1.5 times more likely. And the reasons for this is still not well understood, but it is believed that these higher risks may be due to the higher rate of vascular diseases often seen in these groups. And with regard to gender, as seen here as well, recent research has also found women to be more at risk than men. And at first glance, you might think that this is because women typically live longer than men, making them that much more likely to reach the ages of greater risk. However, there is emerging evidence that suggests that this may be due to unique biological reasons, due to a certain gene variant that some women may carry. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And at this point, I would love to hand this off to my lovely colleague, Elizabeth, who will just be going over some of the treatment and the diagnosis and research behind Alzheimer's.
Thank you so much, Sophie. As you mentioned, I will continue talking about the stages of Alzheimer, as well as the diagnosis and the importance of research. So we can continue with the slides. Thank you so much, by the way. We have a general question for our audience today. What are some ways that we can use to stay healthy? And this is just for you to have this conversation with your family and your loved ones. Or if you feel comfortable typing in the chat or in the Facebook Live, you can always do so. Thank you so much about that. There is not a single test that can diagnose Alzheimer. However, it is very important to have a medical evaluation for your primary care provider. The evaluation might include some things such as medical history, mental status testing, information from your family and friends, as well as physical and neurological exams. And also they rule out other causes for this terrible disease. Well, there is not really a cure for Alzheimer's disease or a way to stop or slow this progression of the illness. So there are so many options that we can have depending on our age, depending on our physical condition, etc. A doctor, for instance, may suggest steps to stay healthy. So that's why we had the previous question. So what are some of the things that will be helping us to not develop this illness or to live a better life once we have this Alzheimer? So one of those suggestions from our doctors is to exercise regularly, to eat a healthy diet rich in fruits and vegetables. And it's important to remember that everything that is good for your heart is good for your brain. Also, it's important to spend time with family members and friends, to keep always a very healthy life. If you are suffering from diabetes, try to take the right medication for that. If you are suffering from blood pressure, avoid eating salty food, try to live a healthy life. And it's very common that sometimes we make excuses, or we think that to do exercise will be very difficult due to the pandemic. But if you really enjoy to be dancing, for example, you can just play some music and to be moving your body on the rhythm of that music. And with this useful tool that is the internet, you can find so many different videos about yoga, exercise, or just listening music that is good for your emotional status or your mental health. Also, it is important to stop smoking if you are smoking, and to get help if you feel depressed, and to avoid drinking alcohol beverages. Okay, thank you so much. We can go to the next slide. So I will continue talking about the resources that we have in our community. We know that those who are living with Alzheimer's, as well as their family members, can understand better the available options searching in the internet, and also they can live with a better understanding, coping with this situation. So on the internet, you can find these local resources. We have, for example, als.org, that is help you to access reliable information and resources, such as Community Resource Finder, that you can find local resources. We have the Alzheimer Navigator, that you can access the needs that you have. Those needs will depend on the stage of your family member who is diagnosed with Alzheimer. We have also Alzheimer and Dementia Caregiver Center, when you can get information for all the stages of the disease. We have also als.org/education, where you can find online workshop, including the basic memory loss, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. We have Alzheimer Connected. This is hosted by the Alzheimer Association. Alz Connected is a free online community where people living with Alzheimer, caregivers, family, and friends can ask questions and get advice and find support. This is very important because Alz Connected is a resource that is available 24 hours, 7 days the week. So you can always dial the number 1-800-272-3900, and it's available in the screen that has been shared right now. So please take a moment to write down these phone numbers. And even if you don't have at this moment a family or friend who is diagnosed with Alzheimer, you can always just do a research about these resources and learn from them. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Something that I forget to mention is Dementia Friends. That's another very useful resource. This is great for those who want to make a difference, connect, and help or educate others about the perception of dementia. Some people think that dementia could be something natural, that it comes when we get older, but this is not true. So Dementia Friends initiative aims to transform the way the nation thinks, acts, and talk about this particular illness. And the ones who register to become Dementia Friends, they will be invited to attend free information sessions to find out more what it's like to live with dementia, and turn to understand better what they can do in their own communities. So this is very important. And talking about these resources that we have, the National Institute of Health, or NIH, has helped to found several distinguished organizations oriented around Alzheimer awareness and resources, including this in Chicago. So we have Alzheimer Association that is very popular, but also we have the Rush Alzheimer Disease Center, where Sophie, Dr. Lisa, and myself are working currently. The Rush Alzheimer Disease Center is located in Rush University Medical Center and is one of the 29 Alzheimer centers in the country, designated and founded by the National Institute of Aging. So it's important for you to have in mind these two available resources in Chicagoland area. Can we please go to the next slide? Thank you so much. So the resources that the community have been grown in time. And this is important because we know that every year there are so many more people diagnosed with Alzheimer. And these are some of the funding from the government that is happening right now. In 2020, for instance, we have $2.8 billion designated just for this kind of research studies and all the things that we may need if we have Alzheimer. So it is important to keep in mind that this is very common and we can make a difference. But how can we make a difference? So we can move to the next slide. It is possible that all of you are having these questions. Well, how can I help with this situation, right? So we can help in so many different forms. And for this, I will request to go to the next slide if it's possible. Thank you so much for that. So in the Rush University Medical Center, and in particular to the Rush Alzheimer Department Disease, we are looking for adults over 18 years old to participate in two different kind of studies, but these are not the only ones. So one is the Rush Memory Clinic data, and the main participation consists on answering some surveys over the phone, and it doesn't have any cost. But you are helping researchers understand what is happening with our brain over time. And also we have the specimen repository where you can donate your brain so researchers can make some new discoveries with this. But as I mentioned before, these are not the only resources available for you to help. So we can move to the next one. Thank you. So we have these other two research studies available for you. One is Preventable. And Preventable is one of the largest research studies in older adults. And this particular research study, it had the purpose is to learn when people is taking this medicine, statin. This is a common drug to use to lower the cholesterol. But this drug can help other adults to live well for a longer time, and by preventing dementia, disability, or heart disease. But also we have the All of Us Research Program. And the All of Us Research Program is also a very open research study for everyone who is older than 18 years old. The overall goal of the program is to help researchers understand why some people get sick and others remain healthy. It's very easy to participate. The ones who want to participate in this study, they need to create an account online in the website www.joinallofus.org, and they can help by answering some surveys. Our health depends on so many things, such as where we live, the food that we eat, the amount of exercise that we practice. So by you answering these surveys, you are helping researchers understand why some people get sick and others remain healthy. And also, if you want to be a full participant, we can invite you on a one-time in-person visit at the hospital to collect some measurements, such as height, weight, blood pressure, blood and urine samples. And we can please move to the next slide. So you can find our information available in the screen that has been shared. And with this, I will give Dr. Lisa the opportunity to walk us to the question and answer session. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa.
You're most welcome. What a wonderful presentation. Sophie and Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Just wanted to point out a couple of things that really stood out for me, and then we can turn it over to the Q&A part of it, is Sophie, I love the way that you were giving very specific examples when you're describing the 10 signs of Alzheimer's disease. I think that was so helpful, and I appreciate the personal aspect to it as well. It helped to crystallize for me, and I hope our viewers as well, about things that you may want to watch out for and follow up with your healthcare provider. And then with Elizabeth, your integration of the heart and the brain and the connection there was so helpful in terms of emphasizing to people all the things that can be done just in terms of leading a healthy lifestyle. And, especially, I'm a clinical health psychologist. And so I'm always kind of talking to people about the importance of taking care of those health conditions and making sure that we're, placing ourselves in the best a possible way as we age. And also, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing all of those resources and, with current programs and outreach that people might want to utilize. And then also just a wealth of research studies. As you mentioned, the All of Us research program is, really one of the first of its kind in terms of being, on a national landscape. And I love the way that you've also encouraged our viewers to kind of look at the website and find out more information if they so desire. So thank you for that. Very much needed and useful information. So with that said, I'm wondering if we have any questions.
Yeah, hi. So I just want to remind everyone that's watching that you can type your questions into Facebook or the chat box on YouTube, and we'll be able to kind of go through and answer them. That's what we'll do now. So we'll start with just a couple of the questions. One was in regards to the end of Elizabeth's portion, talking about statins and dementia, and just a question about how do statins help with dementia?
So I can also jump in with this one. So with regards to the preventable study, when you're looking at statins, I believe that they're trying to determine as to how or whether statins could help prevent the onset of dementia, not only in dementia, but other things like heart disease and other disabilities. And as of right now, I personally do not know the exact workings of how statins specifically help to prevent dementia, but that's exactly what they're studying. So the more people that we have participating in that, the more information that we'll also be able to get as well. And I don't know if Lisa, you would like to jump in and add anything?
No, I think that you answered that quite in a nice way. And I know that you also had one of the PIs at Rush is Raj Shah for the preventable study. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So yes, and I think that on the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center, maybe they can follow up a little bit more about that in particular. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, and
Great
then
question.
just kind of another one that's kind of more about research and going into the things that you guys were talking about at the end there. What is some of the new dementia research studies or findings that you're excited about?
Well, that's a very good question. So these are the research studies that we have currently. And in order to progress to others, it's very important that people continue participating in these ones, because we cannot advance, right, if we don't have the enough participants for these ones. So these options are able for almost everyone that are older than 18 years old. So if you are 18 years old or more, you can always participate by answering some surveys, just being in your home, answering some surveys for the All of Us research program. But you can also participate by answering some surveys over the phone for the data clinic that we have. Or if you want to donate your brain, that will be a very big step that will be helping us so much. So for sure, there are other research studies, but the Roche Alzheimer Department disease is working in particular with these ones. And we hope to increase awareness about this situation, and we can receive more very good questions like this one. I don't know if Sophie or Dr. Lisa want to add something else.
Sure. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That's such a great point. And also to add, this is one that I am particularly excited about and fascinated about. Some of you may remember earlier when I had gone over some of the risk factors that can affect your or increase your likelihood of developing Alzheimer's. And one of those was touching on the gender aspect of it and the fact that there's been more findings showing that women are more likely than men to have it. And there was a recent study done at Stanford University, I believe, showing that out of a group of 8,000 participants, men and women, certain women, and I may have mentioned this already earlier, so forgive me if I'm repeating it, but certain women were shown to have a much higher likelihood of developing the disease, or they did later, when they had this certain gene variant called ApoE. What was it? I think it was ApoE 2027 or something like that. And I encourage you to look this up. If you looked up Stanford University Alzheimer's trial, you might find some more information on that as well. So, sharing a little bit of my 2 cents.
Great. Yes. Love those responses, Sophie and Elizabeth. And the other thing I just want to, again, encourage our viewers is to go to some of those outreach websites that you listed, such as the Alzheimer's Connected. I bet that some of those other organizations can help people to stay current with other types of programs or research. And I just want to also encourage people to, it doesn't ever hurt to make those calls sooner rather than later. I mean, I always feel that even in clinical practice, the hardest part is taking that first step. And sometimes you can practice doing that by just, picking up the phone and calling and asking a question, just like one of our viewers did. So thank you for that. And, there's a wealth of information to share. And, you can be a part of helping to answer those questions through research as well.
Great, yeah. And just a note too, and I'll say this again at the end, but if you're watching the presentation now, this presentation will be saved both on our YouTube channel and on our website. So you'll be able to very easily see those links and go back and look at the things that we're talking about now. So one more question that came through. Are there nutritional supplements which may help support functions to support cognitive health?
Great. And that's a question that also comes up a lot. And I'll see if Sophie and Elizabeth want to join in on that. But what we do know is that, some people do think that taking supplements can reduce the risk or prevent dementia. And studies on this are sort of ongoing. Some studies are focused on vitamin E, B, C, and ginkgo biloba, folate, selenium, but they haven't, from what I understand, been conclusive. Is that correct, Sophie and Elizabeth? Are there other more current research in this area?
No, I think you are correct.
That's-
Yeah, so
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it's very important to keep trying, even though to have a very healthy life, because some studies shows, for instance, that those who are living a healthy life and are very positive, they have less chances to get Alzheimer. So it's not just our physical activity, but also our mental health is such an important part for this. I'm sorry, Sophie, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, not at all. I just wanted to add to that, in addition to that, because yes, our mental health really, really does have a huge role in those prevention efforts, but also with regard to the supplement question. This is, as Dr. Sanchez Johnson was saying, one of the biggest myths, if you will, regarding Alzheimer's disease as to whether supplements can reduce that risk. And this is really inconclusive still. There have been studies done on whether taking vitamins E, B, and I think ginkgo biloba. Biloba, am I pronouncing that right? Thank you. And also supplements like selenium. There have been studies done as to whether things like that could help reduce it, but it's still inconclusive. But with the advancing technology that we have today, and the increasing participation of participant helping to go through those studies, that's really the best way that we can get more answers.
That's great, and great responses. And to understand that these are fantastic questions also to follow up with your healthcare provider. I myself, as a clinical psychologist, don't prescribe medications, or I'm not so much on that side of things, but certainly even I ask my providers questions about other types of supplements. And so yes, encourage you to kind of follow up and stay healthy.
Great. And here's another, how about software like Luminosity or other online cognitive programs, right? You often see advertisements for computer games and stuff for brain health. Are there any suggestions? Do you support the use of those? Anything to say about those, or any suggestions for good sites like those?
Well, as Dr. Lisa mentioned before, it's very important to consult with their primary care provider. But for sure, any activity that is helping our brain will be very good for us, such as to be having some online games that will help us with our mind, or even to try to learn a new language or to play an instrument, for instance. So those are the kind of activities that are helping our brain to stay healthy, as well as our body and our mind.
And I do want to also add onto that. Elizabeth brings up such a great point with regard to activities that aren't just oriented around technology that could maybe help, whether it be a diagnostic type of technology or something on your phone that's meant to help be more of a mental challenge. What we really encourage people to do is to also seek things that aren't just technology based, things such as puzzles, reading, things that are truly an exercise for the brain. Those are so important in those prevention methods as well.
Great, thank you. And I can just make a really quick commercial for an online resource that the library has. And it also has an app called Mango, right?
Okay.
Which kind of takes you through and helps you learn a different language. I'm trying to learn Italian right now, not very successfully, but it's really fun, and it's a great way to engage and learn a new skill. So another question that we have coming in: how do you suggest approaching a loved one who is exhibiting memory issues, but who themselves does not recognize any memory problems? That's a great question.
Mhm.
And please, Elizabeth and Dr. Lisa Sanchez-Johnson, please feel free to jump in as well. I've been on the end of this. I think I mentioned earlier about my grandfather, who was very, very dear to me. And he was the type of person, one of those people who was very stubborn. He always took care of everybody else, but when it comes to yourself, he's one of those people who isn't very willing to look at his own well-being. And to be quite honest with you, I know that these situations can be so hard and so sensitive, but in some cases, it may actually be best and easiest for both the family members and the person being that may be ultimately diagnosed to have this be brought up in a conversation with a neurologist or with your primary caregiver as well, because in those situations they also would be able to stay in front of your family member, who could then attest to and give supporting information that where they agree that, yes, I have noticed there have been some behavioral changes that have been concerning, but in those cases that I believe is the safest option sometimes, because I know this can be a very sensitive topic to bring up as well.
Yes, I love the response that you gave, Sophie, and especially the question, because it just speaks to, the sensitivity around this, and to kind of keep that with us, and to respect everybody's dignity through this process. I think that's a lovely suggestion, to be able to go, even with a person to their appointment, to offer some support. And, it's just important overall in terms of helping people to understand that we want the best for them, right? Want to keep them safe and healthy, and also to have some consistency in their routine. So those are generally things that people can buy into, and maybe can value as well. But yeah, due to the sensitive kind of nature of it, it probably is a fine idea to go along to a doctor's appointment, and to be in an environment that's not judgmental, and that people are there that truly care about them in terms of their mental and physical health.
Exactly. And I also want to add on to that. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Some of the resources that Elizabeth had gone over earlier, such as a group called Dementia Friends. There's so many groups out there for people who, even before an actual diagnosis has been made, everybody has been in such a similar situation before, where you may not know who to reach out to, and maybe this is something that you're afraid to talk about with friends, even because you don't want to broach the subject or cause unnecessary alarm. And it's a lot of overwhelming emotions. And so I really encourage people to also reach out to those support groups as well, just for any information. We will also be going over a lot of this in our next webinar event, which will be on caregivers. And it's not just caregivers who are physically giving care, such as certified nurse assistants and people within that profession. Caregivers also apply to our family members and friends and neighbors. So we will be going over that as well next week, if anybody's interested.
I love that you're emphasizing that and putting a plug in for us as well. And you're right, Sophie, that, there's not one right way or one wrong way. There's just all these aspects to consider. And for somebody that's going through this, it is a lot. And so some of the resources that are out there, again, that can offer support to individuals who are touched by this, can offer them support so that they can be in the best place to offer support to others. Because again, there is no one way of this is what should be done in this circumstance. So thank you for emphasizing that.
Yeah, so we've gone through all of the questions that have come into us. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. And just a reminder that this presentation is will be saved on our YouTube channel, and you'll also be able to find it on our website. So all of the fantastic resources that we were given and everything else that you want to look up will be kind of kept there so that you can share them or watch the presentation again. So thank you so much, Sophie, Elizabeth, Dr. Sanchez-Johnson. This has been so fantastic. And you've given us such important information and been so helpful. So just to say again that we're going to have another session, Resiliency and Coping Strategies for Dementia Caregivers is going to be live streamed next week in the same places. So on our Facebook and on our YouTube channel at the same time. We'll be doing it at noon, and it'll be a very similar format. We'll go through the presentation, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So today's program and next week's have been supported in part by the National Library of Medicine and the National Institutes of Health. So we're very thankful, especially to Deb Werner from University of Chicago, who has helped us with this programming. And it's a great way to kind of get our information out there. So again, Sophie, Elizabeth, Dr. Sanchez-Johnson, thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we'll see everyone here again next week. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.